Thank you. I want to thank Randy Wren for slotting me after Lloyd. I do appreciate it. Topical, information packed, and a Southern accent. Good scheduling. What I'm going to take up with you, what I'm going to take up with you, is the the negotiation as an element of conflict resolution. For those of you who are exhausted from Lloyd, kind of kick back. This is a bit of a think piece. Uh, now, you're gonna get to know a guy named Chester L. Karras, but this is his quote: "Experts rule negotiations." Um, Actually, experts rule all of conflict resolution. The lawyers and the negotiators and whatnot, uh, they are the generals, but it's our facts and our opinions that will ultimately be deployed and carry the day. Now, since we have Brits here, let me just go through a glossary real quick. When I speak of underwriters, I will be speaking of the underwriting department within insurance carriers, carriers being a company, limited partnership, P&I club, et cetera. This is the company. The underwriters are typically in the underwriting department. They are typically English and philosophy majors who couldn't find anything better to do. They, we have all found, frustratingly, the underwriters writing a policy that puts the carrier and the surveyor in a horrible position. But God bless them. It's people like that who keep people in business. The others are the actuaries. We love those guys. They are the nerds who were nerds before it was cool. These guys are able to calculate and quantify in dollars time whatever unit that you would like. They are able to tell us exactly what a risk is, uh, in real time, and if you move a comma, how much that will cost. They then send this information over to the underwriters, the underwriting department rather, where they promptly ignore it. And finally, the claims department. These are our guys. These are typically poli sci and econ majors. They didn't fail algebra 2 in high school. They got a gentleman's D, but it still kept them out of the hard sciences. All right, now my first C story. This was told to me by one of our Sam's guys. I believe you'll all know him, but I won't mention his name. And it seems he was working the oil patch in the North Sea oil patch, and two small ships, because there's no such thing as a boat out there. Two small. One of them was towing a towed array. And I think there was some kind of coal regs problem, and the towed array was full of oil finders, or whatever they are, whatever towed arrays do, and the array was lost, and also the surveying expedition was compromised. The loss of the gear and the associated costs, et cetera, were, let's say, a million, and it could be dollars, euros, whatever, pounds, whatever. And they hired the parties got together uh, and hired our AMS, and he wrote his report and put it in PowerPoint fashion, and he assessed the damage, apportioned the fault the way it is done in Admiralty. And he shows up at Lime Street, and the 5 or 6 concerned, they're all insurance guys. He presents it, and thus and such and thus and such. And the 5 guys say he started at 10. It's now noon when he's done with his presentation. And the guys say, "Yep, that works for me. That's fine. Let's go get some flat, warm beer and bubble and squeak, and it's done." Now, that's fine. but there's a problem. What is it? Well, the my friend, the AMS, he is very experienced, knowledgeable. His honesty and honor are quite beyond question. He's Canadian after all. So why wouldn't this work? Well, when he told me the story, first I called him a Bolshevik, not because he is one, but it was the worst name I could think of on short order. Now, if we have a million whatevers, say 5% of this loss could be used for survey costs. That's 50,000 whatevers. That's 5 surveyors, 10,000. Yeah, that would be about right. Well, he did it for less. As we say in the South, that boy's wasting game. We don't like that. The second problem is his judgment, and he's honest, he's square, he's knowledgeable, everything's right. But his judgment hasn't been tested. And that is the very essence of conflict resolution, because it takes, it hasn't, his, forgive me, lost train of thought, his conclusions had not been through the crucible of reason. You have to have two parties essentially arguing it out. Now, is that negotiation? Yes. The other elements of conflict negotiation are, of course, litigation, which is DEFCON 5, global thermonuclear war. The cousin is arbitration, which is good. I don't see much of it. I've been prolifically involved in an arbitration just once over 20 odd years. The other one, the third, is mediation. Mediation has been very good to me. In Florida, if you file a case in circuit court that sounds in admiralty, there is mandatory mediation of between the parties before discovery. So you file it 30 days later. You're down in West Palm Beach, and the mediators are typically retired circuit court judges, and you hash it out. That has worked very well for me, my clients, and the attorneys, and I'll get to that later. But in all these cases, there is the conclusion will have been tested. It was not in the North Sea case. Now, where does this all come from? We say reason, irrational, it all comes from the same thing, and that is Aristotle. Aristotle was the student of Plato, who was the student of Socrates. He, for the most part, invented classic logic out of formal logic out of whole cloth. There have been adjustments over the years with this, that, and the other additions, very few subtractions. And Aristotle looked at Euclid, and Euclid had brought together the science, let's say, of geometry and made it a unified theory. And he also introduced deduction from it. For those of you who took sophomore plane geometry, you remember when you got sent home for an Algebra 1 with the homework, you were doing algebra problems. What were you doing in geometry the next year? You were doing geometric proofs. And each time you worked it out and found that pi r squared does indeed is the formula for the area of a circle, then you again proved Euclid's formula. Now, Aristotle and Euclid's point on this is that pi r squared is always, it's a universal truth. It is always the area of a circle. Aristotle wanted to do the same thing. Now, you would, with Aristotle, if any of you have been unfortunate enough to be in Catholic school or have taken formal logic through school, you remember the syllogisms. A, B, and then a proposition A, proposition B, and then a conclusion. But the essence of formal logic is thesis. I propose something is true, the thesis. There is argumentation, and another party introduces an antithesis, and that would be he would point up flaws in my reasoning or my facts, and we would hash those out. This is the resolution. And the result, which would be true, would be the synthesis. This would be true, perhaps even universally true. Now, argumentation is the key of it. This is head to head. This is not a beef, having a beef with your spouse. This is formal in the nature of a debate. Debate is simply formal argumentation element of formal logic. For instance, St. Augustine, 130 miles north of Stuart, he would be St. Augustine, but St. Augustine, he decided to prove the existence of God by logic. And he wrote a dialogue. He took both ends on this, in this case. And after many painful pages, if you really, really want to numb your mind, try reading it. But he proved that God did indeed exist by logic. And if it was proved by logic, then it can't be refuted. Now, there's a tiny problem with logic. Just like a gun, say, it's neither always a good nor always a bad thing. With, for instance, let's think about Thomas de Torquemada. You might remember that name. He was the Grand Inquisitor of the Spanish Inquisition. And you'll remember Ferdinand and Isabella expelled all of the Jews and Muslims from Spain when it was reunited. That was fine. You could either leave or you could convert, the conversos. Now, if you happen to be a former Jew or a former Muslim, a converso, and you were somehow suspect, you would be taken into Torquemada's tender mercies, and he would torture you until he was either sure that you were a Christian, or that if you weren't a Christian, that he would torture you until you renounced your former faith and accepted the doctrine of Christ. And what would logic would dictate, that's good, but Torquemada wanted to make sure you didn't change your mind. So as soon under this torture, as soon as he was convinced that you had accepted Christ as the true faith, then he would kill you. And his logic was he was doing you a favor, because if he killed you at that instant, your salvation was assured. You would go to heaven. But if he let you go to heal for your injuries to heal, then you might backslide. Logic, neither always a good nor always a bad thing. Now, the Anglo-American judicial system is at some point after the English got done with trial by combat, which has recently seen a little revival, and floating witches to see if floating a troublesome old woman, if she sank, then she was innocent. If she floated, she was a witch and would be burned. But the Anglo-American judicial system is based on logic and formal logic and reasoning. Now, even in filed cases, in litigation, this is global thermonuclear war. Even in litigation, 90% of the cases filed are settled before trial. Now, sometimes on the courthouse steps, sometimes not. Now, how did that happen? It wasn't by magic, it was by negotiation. Arbitration, similarly. Now, personally, as a surveyor, I very seldom negotiate. In Florida, or very seldom negotiate. Typically, the scheduling and procedure and whatnot for joint field surveys, that's always a knotty problem to get a bunch of guys together, get 5 surveys together and get them to agree on how things are going to be done. That's difficult to do, and it's a negotiation. The other time that it is not negotiation is reviewing a damage estimate from a yard. Well, here in Florida, we have private adjusters. Oxymoronically, in other places they're called public adjusters, but private adjusters are regulated by the Florida Department of Legal Services because they handle other people's money, and they enforce the law regarding private adjusters. Well, here in Florida, if you negotiate on an insurance claim and you are not a private adjuster, nor are you an employee of the carrier, then you are violating the law. It is a felony to impersonate or to behave as a private adjuster. Some years ago, a very fine young surveyor was doing a damage claim. There was a private adjuster on the other side. It got contentious, and the young surveyor made so bold as to write up his own estimate after having seen the one submitted by the yard. He wrote up his own. And the private adjuster said, "Oh, thank you, I'll take care of I want a copy of that so I can study it." And the next day, Miami-Dade picked him up on a felony beef of behaving as a private adjuster. And after some hemming and hawing, it was dismissed, and he agreed to pay a $5,000 fine to FPL, or Florida Department of Financial Services. And he decided to leave practice then. It was a loss for our profession. So here in Florida, we negotiate very carefully on a damage survey. For instance, if you see a charge for a shaft, and what do you say? That charge is not reasonable and ordinary. It just so happens I've called the yard and I know what your cost is. No numbers, etc. And that's the way. That is not negotiation in Florida. Now, despite that, let's talk about negotiating in general. There are natural negotiators. I've met a few. Most of them are women. I think there's a reason for that. But just by the way, forgive me. By the way, if any of y'all have had any training in negotiation, a course, a class, et cetera, please unmute and kibitz. If you want to contradict me, that's fine. But please, if you have something to contribute, please do it in real time. Now, I happen to be a terrible negotiator. I'm aggressive. I'm reactive. Things tend to descend into what we call mutual admeasurement, wherein length and girth are measured in the course of a negotiation. But I've had a tiny bit of training. So it seems I spent the bulk of my 30s in the Caribbean running charter boats and later private yachts. And as things would go, by now I'm 40, and I took a wife. And as most of us who take a spouse, most surveyors who take a spouse, she had earning potential far beyond mine. So they take me out of the warm Caribbean and they put me in Essex, Connecticut. And she goes to work, thankfully, goes to work, and money. But I have to find something to do. So I went to Northrop and Johnson yacht brokerage house. This is years ago, of course. And they were, I guess there were 5 offices, and they took me on as a broker. And so now I'm a yacht broker. I was there for just shy of 3 years. What happened was they found out my mother and father were married. And when that happened, of course, I couldn't be a yacht broker anymore. But before then, when I got there, they sent me to the Chester Karras course. Now, Chester Karras, Chester Karras, I have the first, wrote a book in 1972. There, wrote a book in 1972. I still have it. The Negotiation Game. Now, this came out of work that he had done at the UCLA in the School of Business. Now, it seems Karras had worked for Hughes Aerospace as a negotiator in the purchasing department. And being a good guy, they sent him to UCLA, and he did, as near as I can tell, the groundbreaking work of an empirical study of negotiation. And the results of it are in that book. I'm going to go through some of his findings. Let me set it up. What he did, he got 120 negotiators from 4 aerospace firms, and he brought them into his lab, office, whatever, and did a series of trial negotiations in the nature of duplicate bridge, meaning that they were each given a fact pattern, put into a room, and they would come out with a result, and that everybody would go through all of them, and he could rate them. Now, before that, they also brought their personnel files with them. And he, from their superior's rating, he would through his the individual negotiator's superior's rating, he would come up with a median score. And that of these 120 fellows, 60 of them were regarded as skilled and 60 unskilled. Now, I couldn't think of any better way to do it if I were Karras, but it's not quite scientific. But in any event, he goes. So we have skilled and unskilled negotiators, and sometimes there would be skilled versus skilled, sometimes skilled versus et cetera. Now, what they found is that I'm sorry, one other point. He also sent out to each of these negotiator superiors a list of traits. There were 40 of them. And of these traits, he would have the negotiator rated by a superior on those traits. So this is the setup. Now, they would be given a packet of facts, and they would be rated with power or without power. And if they were with power, there would be various levels, meaning an overwhelming case, a good case, a fair case, et cetera. And these, they would negotiate through these. Power, he defined as the other party having control of one's resources or time. Now, in an insurance claim, say on a yacht claim, if you found that it's not a covered loss, what is the power? Well, in this case, the carrier has 100% of the power because it's controlling the money and the time. And the time, once it denies the claim, the time is up. But when a surveyor, perhaps one who's a bit of a jerk, gets brought into it and says, nah, I demand a joint field survey. This is a covered loss, et cetera. The power begins to shift. Now, all these power ratings were initial power. Now, so he does these time after time after time. And I'm going to go quickly through the results. And some, he had these, he had, sweetie, I need to go back. We'll get to effective negotiation in a minute. Never mind. We'll look at effective negotiation for a minute. He went through these and he found a few things that, more than a few things, that he could prove to be scientifically correct, meaning they had been tested by a chi-square. A chi-square is a test that, given with a given sample size, you can determine if a correlation is mere luck or if there is a correlation. Let me go through these quickly. People with higher aspirational levels won higher awards. Higher aspiration levels, meaning that if you demand 100,000 for thus and such, you are going to do better than somebody whose initial demand is 50,000. People with higher aspirational levels won higher awards. Skilled negotiators, this is the top half, with high aspirations won even higher awards than even with less power. That means, think of it like a hand of cards. That is just another way of speaking about the power. That is probably the strongest finding that he had. High ball and low ball, always a good thing. Next, concession behavior. Large initial demands improve probability of success. Fine. Losers make the largest single concession. Now, what he found was that if you highball and somebody makes a counteroffer, let's say I want 100,000, you offer 70,000. What is my counter to your counter? Well, would it be, let's see, we're 70 apart, everybody's thinking let's meet in the middle? No, the smart thing to do would be to say, I want 100,000, you've offered 70. How about 97,500? Small incremental concessions always are the way to go, according to Karras. Losers make the largest, losers meaning the party that did less well compared to others, given the same fact pattern. Losers make the largest single concession. And that could be at the high end or the low end, or at the beginning or toward the end of the negotiation. People making small concessions during negotiation fail less, although they more frequently deadlock. What is deadlock? That is, we don't come to an agreement. Now, if this happens to be a case that's already been filed in Florida Circuit Court, that means we start going through discovery, et cetera. That's a deadlock. Deadlocks, my attitude is deadlock is a failure. If I were to get into, if I get sent to negotiate a deal, I'm going to do my damnedest to negotiate the deal. Karras's attitude is deadlock is a deadlock. It's neither good nor bad. Losers tend to make the first compromise. Now that's again, loser meaning the negotiator who did less well than others, given the same fact pattern. High initial demand tends to limit success, or tends to be successful rather than failure or deadlock. If you make a high initial demand, which we know is always good, high ball, you will tend to fail less, meaning lose more than the other guy, than your other compatriots, or deadlock. Now, power. This one I found kind of difference, kind of interesting and actually surprising. With equal differences, performance between skilled and unskilled becomes less when both sides possess greater power. What that means is if you got the cards, it's less important if you're skilled or you're unskilled. Now, generally, a skilled negotiator would do better with a bad hand than a less skilled negotiator. However, they found one thing, that the very skilled negotiators, when given with less power, meaning they had a bad hand, very often tended to throw up their hands. Fine, do whatever you want. Meaning that he wasn't going to get an attaboy from a supervisor. He wasn't going to get a story to tell the guys in the bar. This is stupid, and he just gave away his client's money. Skilled negotiators with power were benevolent to unskilled negotiators, which is there's a lesson to be learned there. What he didn't tell us is what unskilled negotiators did when they had power over a skilled negotiator, but they tended to be benevolent. That's a good thing. More skilled the negotiator, the more they won. We knew that. All negotiators could not estimate what the opponent wants. This I find surprising. In a negotiation, I tend to, I want to know where I want to know what he wants. So the fellow on the other side wants, so I can get to where we can close this. Now, the deadlines. Bad things happen at deadline time, very bad things. Unskilled negotiators approaching deadline made much larger concessions, and even if they had been doing well to that point, they responded to the deadline and things went very bad for them. Now, responding to this deadline, I can't help but think of this Brexit EU thing where Britain was going to crash out, and what, the day after Christmas or something, they decided, all right, well, we're going to reach a deal. Well, that close to deadline, things get sloppy, and you have to wonder if once they look into this document in the cold, hard light of day, what concessions have been made. Is the UK ceded Ulster to the Irish Republic? I don't know. Strasbourg in Alsace, that's the seat of the EU Parliament. Is that to be hereafter known as Thatcher City? You don't know. Now, I want to get to next I'm sorry. Let me finish up my journey as a negotiator. Now, as a yacht broker, you're standing over deals. Unfortunately, for the buyer, we were all operating under the old YABA, that's Yacht Architects and Brokers Association, listing contract, wherein our fiduciaries, you remember fiduciaries from yesterday? Our fiduciaries ran to the seller. I do not know what the current sales and purchase and sale contracts, and most importantly, the listing agreements are like. But it was kind of hard, particularly if you were the selling broker, to give good advice to your client, knowing that your fiduciaries ran to the seller. But I took it to heart, and I started getting interested in it. And I bought the negotiating game Karras's first work. And what's there now is effective negotiating. This is a 6 CD, 90 minutes per collection of his lectures. And I was given this at the seminar. Of course, it wasn't CDs in 1991 or 2 or whenever it was. I think they were cassettes. And you kind of get used to them. Now, he's done some, other than his pioneering work, he, as soon as he wrote The Negotiating Game, that book you first saw, it sold very well, and he quickly forgot Hughes Aerospace and became what is now, was then and is now, still the largest negotiation training firm in the United States. You can buy these now. I don't even know how much seminar was in $1991, but it was not inexpensive. Northrop and Johnson was a real sport. They demanded that I go, and they paid half. But you can buy effective negotiating and actually the negotiating game. You can buy effective negotiating, the CDs for I think $15 on Amazon. The picture of it will be in the back of the presentation, so you can go if you want to do it. Now, 9 hours is a long time, but from Stewart to Key West round trip is about 9 hours. One connection at Philadelphia Airport is 9 hours. You can go through it, and once you start listening to him, he does some innovative things. He named some behaviors, particularly the one that I remember best is an unethical negotiating behavior. He calls it a bogey, and a bogey is when a fellow comes in, he negotiates, and you think it's in good faith. He negotiates, and you come to terms, and he says, "Fine. Now all I have to do is go tell my wife and see if she agrees," which means he can come back and get a second bite at the apple. That's a bogey. The other thing is negotiating style. He names Russian negotiating style, which is very simple. No, 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 no. Demand, demand, demand. Never make a concession, etc. Typically deadlock. He talks about the Arab method of negotiation, and that is dinner theater. That it is to be done on a social basis, and this is dramatic. This is, oh, you're killing me, etc. You deadlock 3 or 4 times an hour. People walk out, etc. That's the Arab. He also talks about, now this one I find very strange, the French style of negotiation, wherein the parties agree that they're going to come to terms, they're going to make a deal, and then they sort out the particulars one at a time. Now, this reminds me, it doesn't make sense. This reminds me of builders, where you've made a deal on boat builders made a deal on the build, and then there is the inevitable change order. Now, the change order. I've had a builder tell me, I'm not in the boat building business, I'm in the change order business. When somebody wants to change the color of the granite in the galley, and the builder says, all right, that will be X number of dollars. What negotiating power does, think about power again, what kind of hand, what negotiating power does the buyer have with the builder on a change order? And the answer is 0. So that's when those guys get real happy. Next, I'm sorry. Let me finish my course. Once you become exposed to this a little bit, you begin to see negotiation. You see it everywhere. Marriage. if you don't think it's a negotiation, then your spouse really has you beat. All of life is a negotiation, and I find it amusing. I negotiate with toll takers. Toll booth, he wants $1. Well, what's the real price? Do you offer terms? May I fill out a credit application? How about if I agree to come to your toll booth for the next 3 mornings in a row? What's the price going to be? Now, Karis is a big advocate of expanding the field of negotiation, wherein why not improve a position, a zero-sum game, meaning I have a boat, you want to buy the boat, and every dollar that I demand is less as a dollar that the buyer will not have. But can't you find a better way? Well, you can, and you can expand it. I have to leave that now because I'm running short on time. I want to tell you knew there was going to be a C story. What does this have to do with surveyors? Because I've already told you we don't negotiate. Well, in mediation, as I say, has been very good to me. It seems there was a carrier, and I think it was just in Florida because I didn't hear about it much anywhere else, by a well-known marine carrier, and I think they tried to change business models to see. This was in say 2010, 11. Not at the bottom, but it was pretty grim after the downturn. And their business model was they would write a policy, accept premium, and not pay claims. And they had always been a tough carrier, but now these guys were really bad. And what no carrier likes are dockside sinkers. Dockside sinkers, they just rejected. They denied out of hand. They sent a surveyor by, and he wasn't there very long. And next thing, so I got engaged in one, and they wouldn't even give me a joint field survey. It's raised, and I found the reason that it sank. And they had said, well, the reason it sank was failure of bilge pumps. Well, bilge pumps are meant for incidental water, not for holes in hulls or a fitting that has gone a through hull that's gone bad. In any event, they wouldn't even give me a joint field survey. So what do we do? The owner goes to an attorney here in town, and that was the first of a number of successful ventures we had together. We would do these things, and just the carrier would turn it down. No joint field survey, fine. Let's file suit, and we go to mediation. Now, we did exchange reports, and after suit was filed several times, we would do an informal joint field survey that the carrier surveyor and I were on the boat at the same time. And if we couldn't agree, at least we understood each other, and we go to mediation. So we did very, very well. I got to be the sinker guy around town. And that carrier paid my house payment for certainly a year, and then as quickly as it had started, I guess it was 18 months. They decided to start paying claims again, and the party was over. Now, let me take you to one of these. Let me take you to. May I have 5 minutes, please? I don't know who the next speaker is.
Yes, of course you can, Rick. Keep going.
Thank you. This is a war story. I guess you're going to wonder who the star is. So here it is. We have a Jersey built sport fisherman in South Jersey. No, it is not an Egg Harbor. No, it is not a Viking, but there are a bunch of builders down there. And these Jersey sport fishermen are very traditional, polyester, tabbed wood, bulkheads, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Pretty well thought of. Scantlings are typically a bit light, but it's still a well thought of thing. Well, it had originally come with 671s. I don't know if they were 325s or 375s. I don't think they were the Johnson Towers, but those were worn out, and somebody put Cat Big Sixes in it. So now we're at 700 horsepower a side. And the boat had a problem, and they filed a claim. I'm not involved at this point. And this was not the renegade carrier that I was speaking about. This was like a real carrier. And they sent out a well-known surveyor with a thermographer and a spear carrier and scaffolding and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And they turned down the claim, saying it's a manufacturing defect. Well, this boat was at that point 15 or 16 years old, and it had lived its whole life. It had worn out 671s without this manufacturer's defect making itself apparent. So I get engaged and go through it, and I went to each yard. It was a couple that had it, and they were kind of unusual in that they were both professional mariners. We're talking all ocean, all tonnage mariners, a captain and captain marriage. And they had followed it for the 5 years that they had earned it, and went to I think it was only 2 yards that they had been to in the 5 years. Every time it's hauled, did you see anything? No, it was fine. It was fine. It was fine. Well, the last year, they had gone to the Bahamas, and they had off the Abacos. They'd gone out in the morning on a breezy day, and it turned ugly. A north wind adjacent to the Gulf Stream. In the Bahamas, they call that to rage. Very steep, very short. And they said that they were 12 hours powering up the face of a wave, throttling back, letting the bow fall, green water over, et cetera. And neither of them thought it was particularly, this is what we do. However, fortunately, they had taken their neighbor, a lovely woman of a certain age, as they say, a widow, but still trying, still dyed her hair, still getting tan. And she had been with them, and she was a very experienced yachtswoman. Her father, her dead husband, had been a tournament fisherman and whatnot. She always went along. And she had told me it was the most scared she'd ever been on a boat. So now I have a casualty. That just because it didn't upset the two master mariners, it did upset this very experienced yachtswoman. So we go to mediation, and we hear all about the manufacturer's defect. And their first offer was go away money, $10,000, $15,000, whatever. Boat was insured for $175,000. So the attorney, that woman, by the way, who I was working for, is the best natural negotiator. She had never had training, best natural negotiator that I had ever seen. And that chick was very, very cold. And she's working on them, and now they're starting to play. We're starting to play ball. We're in, I think we're probably at 100,000. And the way these mediations work, sometimes the retired judges are pretty passive, and one party's in one room, one's in the other. Now, she was always taking me to these. Typically, surveyors don't go. And the reason she took me initially was because for 90 seconds, that the judge would, if there's a surveyor there, would ask him, do you have, can you give us a thumbnail of what's happening here? So I would have, she restricted me and made me time it. that I would have 90 seconds to thumbnail the case, obviously in our advantage. But after a while, going back and forth, I was watching her negotiate and she was watching me, and we would chat a little about it. And it got to the point where I always went. A few other attorneys have taken me to mediation. So here's the deal. We're now at 100,000, and I'm sitting there with captain and captain, and she says to me, or says to the attorney, he says, "Well, we've got to finish this today." And I said, "Why? I was looking forward to this. I mean, I wanted this to go the distance. I mean, it was perfect. David versus Goliath. I had, this high-end surveyor on the other hand, and I really liked the looks of my case. And I look at her, and she looked at me and said, my husband and I, we're separating, or we have separated. The boat is the last thing holding us together. We are going to settle this today. Now, ponder, what happened to our power? Because there is no deadlock. Whatever the carrier's final offer is the offer that we're going to take. So we go in one last time, and the attorney went in one last time. I didn't get to go into the negotiations, and comes back with 125,000 and the boat. Well, the boat has these big cats in it. It has gear, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That no deductible. The value was worth 175,000 easy. So this is the way things work. Thinker slide. Oh, one other thing, one other thing. Human behavior, negotiation. Nobody knows. This is this Karras study is the only one I've been able to find. There are all kinds of negotiating books and whatnot. Most of them consist of how irrational people are making decisions. As they say, nobody knows anything, and we don't. Human beings, particularly relative to negotiation, and particularly regarding risk and financial decisions, we are highly irrational. Now, if you want to understand this, I have one other book for you, sweetie. One other book, and it's by a guy. It's called The Undoing Project. The Undoing Project. This is written by a guy named Michael Lewis. He wrote Moneyball. You've seen it. I don't know if you read it, but you've seen it's a Brad Pitt movie. Well, The Undoing Project is about two Israeli psychologists, and what this is about, they did pioneering work in cognitive psychology, and this is the bulk of what you'll find in these negotiating courses about how irrational we are. This Undoing Project takes them through the 7-day or the 6-day war. They were part of the Israeli psychology squad. You can skim through the less interesting parts about their marriages, et cetera, but you'll get into those theories. Okay. Now, as I say, nobody knows nothing about negotiation and about human decision-making. All that we're sure of is that we're irrational. So if you know a little something about negotiation, or from these Kahneman and Tversky are the two psychologists' names that are described in the Undoing Project, you seize a large advantage, because remember, in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. I'm done. Thank you. Any questions?
Rick, thank you very much. Yes, anyone have any questions for Rick? Whilst we wait for a question or two perhaps to pop in, Rick, can I just thank you for sharing your knowledge on what I think is a much misunderstood skill, actually, negotiating. A lot of us are not very good at it. It definitely is an art form. And can I also thank you for referencing Brexit? because we are.
We will see how well that agreement works.
Um,
Wait till you get to the fine print.
the devil is buried in the detail. It really is. And we're already starting to see some of the nasties appear. Things are not quite running as smoothly as they might post-Brexit, despite the assurance that everything would be just fine. So, you know, it is what it is, isn't it? Lots of love pouring in for you, Rick. Lots of nice comments coming in from many of the delegates. So thank you very much.
May I interrupt 1 second? The on my slides, there's one slide of give and take. This is the latest thing. Chester Karras died a year or so ago. Give and take. His machine is still cranking out, and I bought it just to see. It's a complete guideline. It's as a reference book. It is useless. I bought it on Amazon. It is useless. Do not buy give and take. I would suggest buying Negotiating Game. The discs are good. The book I enjoy, but read the Michael Lewis thing. It reads like a novel. These guys are amazing. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick.